Hey sis, come sit with me for a minute. This is where we talk about healing, identity, and patterns. And we remind ourselves that becoming takes grace. Sis, can we talk? Hey sis, can we talk for a minute? So lately, I've been sitting with something that honestly has challenged me deeply. And it's this: why do we sometimes allow family to do things to us that we would never allow anyone else to do? Can we really talk? Why do we call something love or family when it consistently produces pain, betrayal, manipulation, jealousy, or emotional harm? And I know this conversation is uncomfortable because it was uncomfortable for me. Because people immediately say, but that's my family. And maybe that's true. But being family should never become permission to repeatedly wound someone without accountability. I've realized that in many family systems, unhealthy behavior becomes normalized simply because it exists for so long. The manipulation becomes just how they are. The disrespect becomes keep the peace. The betrayal becomes don't take it personal. The jealousy just gets ignored. And the emotional abuse becomes tradition. And somewhere along the way, people begin abandoning themselves trying to preserve relationships that are not preserving them. That's deep. Because if a stranger betrayed us repeatedly, lied to us repeatedly, dishonored us repeatedly, or manipulated us emotionally, many of us would have walked away a long time ago or immediately. But with family, we often keep returning to the same wounds, expecting different outcomes without healing ever taking place. And what God began showing me is this: consistency matters. Because when we tolerate unhealthy behavior from family, we sometimes unconsciously train ourselves to tolerate it everywhere else. We enter friendships ignoring red flags. We stay too long in relationships. We overextend ourselves. And we normalize emotional inconsistency. We excuse behaviors that hurt us, not because it feels good, but because dysfunction became familiar. And familiarity can sometimes disguise itself as love. As a pattern recognizer, I had to sit with the pattern of inconsistency. Why do we create boundaries for strangers but remove them for people who have hurt us the most? Why do we feel guilty protecting ourselves from repeated harm simply because someone shares our bloodline? And I want to say this carefully because healing is not always about cutting people off. I am the cutoff queen, but I will say it's not always about that. Sometimes healing is simply becoming honest. Honest about what hurt. Honest about what's keeping or what's keeps happening. Honest about what patterns continue to repeat. And about the emotional cost of constantly reopening wounds that never healed. Because love and access are not always the same thing. Everyone who is related to you should not automatically have unlimited access to your mind, your emotions, your peace, or your spirit. And I think many of us are learning that boundaries are not disrespect. Boundaries are actually clarity. I say boundaries are how you teach people how to treat you. Boundaries are consistency. Boundaries are saying, I will no longer participate in cycles that continuously harm me and simply because we share the same last name. That doesn't mean you hate them. That doesn't mean you are bitter. And it doesn't mean you think you're better. What it means is you finally recognize that your healing matters too. So today I want to ask you, where are you allowing family members to do things that you would never allow others to do? And what would happen if you became consistent about how people are allowed to treat you, regardless of who they are? Thanks for sitting with me, sis. I am Cleo, the pattern recognizer.